Hey, this is Larry Osborne here, and we've been talking about preaching for life change. And I'm going to take a little bit of a fashion risk in this session and share something that I've learned that, if misunderstood, could make its way into social media, and I could probably look pretty bad. So please, before you tweet something about me or what I'm saying, make sure you hear this whole thing, because I'm going to explain to you why I, quote, stopped teaching the Bible. Now, what I mean by that is, early on in my ministry, I thought my job was to simply teach the Bible faithfully, pass on the information. So if I left people with a really good outline and understanding of Colossians, I had done my job. But as years went on, it began to dawn on me that's not how I disciple people. And the Great Commission tells me that I'm to go into all the world, help people who don't know Jesus become mathetes, or followers, baptize them, and I'm not done until I've taught them to obey everything that Jesus taught. Yet somehow when I was teaching the Bible, it wasn't towards obedience, it was just towards information. And so a subtle shift began to take place that really had a profound impact on the way I viewed my teaching role. And whenever I struggle with a passage now, I often write this little phrase on the top of my note sheet: instruction in Christian living with the Bible as my only authority. It comes out of 2 Timothy chapter 3, where we're told that all Scripture is God-breathed, and it is given to us for teaching, correction, instruction, and training in righteousness. And if that's true of all Scripture, then at the end of the day, every passage I ever teach must have a strong so what. For instance, let's take one of the great theological passages people have argued about forever. It's called the kenosis. It's the idea of Jesus emptying himself, and the theological discussion of exactly how did that happen? How much did he empty himself? Was he setting aside and didn't have any access to his godliness? Did he have access to us, but he could have used all of his God powers? And theologians have argued about that forever. How did he empty himself? But think with me for a moment. If I teach it as instruction in Christian living, I'm going to understand it in its actual context as the Apostle Paul wrote it. For the kenosis passage wasn't a theological passage. It was an illustration of how we're to live. Let me show you what I mean. Paul writes, actually, do nothing out of selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, consider the needs and interests of others as more important than your own. And then he says, in fact, you ought to have in yourselves the same attitude that Jesus Christ had, who, though he existed in the form of God, did not regard that equality as something to be grasped or held on to, but emptied himself, becoming a man, and it goes all the way to the cross, and therefore the Father highly exalted him. So this theological passage we argue about was actually meant to be an illustration showing us what it means to put the needs and interests of others as more important than our own. That's a good example of what I mean when I say I no longer teach the Bible. I instruct people how to live the Christian life with the Bible as my only authority. Think about it and see if it's helpful for you as you try to preach for life change. If this has been helpful, don't forget to subscribe so you can receive a notice every time we post one of these.